All right, any other council discussion? I see Councilmember Wheat.
Thank you, President Gorman. Thank you to Garrett Jackson and Dan Nickel for your work on this. I just want to refer to some of our 2021 council goals and priorities to provide some context for my comments. So a couple of our 2021 council goals and priorities are environmental stewardship and also increasing public outreach, access, and transparency in governments. And so one concern that I have is it sounds like we are lessening the environmental protections that we currently have in our Shoreline Master Program. And let me just stop there and ask whether I'm understanding that correctly. Is the proposal to essentially, by providing more flexibility for private property owners, does that mean that am I correct in understanding that's lessening the environmental protections that we currently have in place?
Mr. Garrett or Mr. Nickel, whoever would like to speak.
Thank you, Council President. I wouldn't say that we are lessening it. I would say that we are providing a balancing act, as every jurisdiction does, and just providing clarity on when mitigation is required to be consistent with our neighbors, and also comments and recommendations made by the Department of Ecology. So mitigation would not be required in certain instances now that would, in the proposed code, as it would with the previous or existing code. But I don't think you would say that it's less protection. Go ahead.
I can add to that, Garrett. There's a good example of this difference is actually with the wetland buffers in the critical areas ordinance that is being proposed for revision. And the revision is actually it's fairly minor, but it's interesting because it offers a slight reduction in the habitat scores for wetland buffers. And that is actually driven by Department of Ecology's guidance, where they have actually gone back and recalibrated their initial guidance from 2014. And with that actually comes out of is a reduction in their buffer widths. And it's important to recognize that even Department of Ecology has reviewed this and determined that that reduction doesn't mean a reduction in protection of those buffers. It just means that the buffers that are employed in those cases for those certain wetlands, they don't need as big a buffer to protect them. And so it may seem like it's a reduction in protection standards, but it's actually, in terms of consistency with ecology's guidance, it still offers the same level of protection.
Thank you for your response to that question, Garrett and Dan. And, still feel some concern about that. When we say that there's going to be less mitigation required, to me, that indicates that to me, that sounds like we're reducing the environmental protections by requiring less environmental buffers, less mitigation, and providing more flexibility for private property owners. And that we're looking at this through a lens of property development and permitting. When, I think the purpose of a Shoreline Master Program, and consistent with our council goal of environmental stewardship, is that we should be looking at this primarily through an environmental stewardship lens. And, when a community member who is a wetland scientist weighs in and shares her expertise and expresses concern, I do take that very seriously. I've heard from various community members that regarding the mailers that were sent out, I've heard from various community members over time that they would like, community members would like to receive mailers, all community members. And one community member in particular has weighed in on this issue, who has lived in Bremerton for her entire life. And she stated that mailers used to be sent out to everyone, but that it's not done anymore. And she has expressed that she would like to see a return to those mailers being sent out more broadly to everyone. So looking at this through a lens of both equity and environmental stewardship and government access and transparency, can you speak to the decision to only send postcards to waterfront property owners rather than to all community members?